Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to be in community with you all tonight. Thank you so much for joining our back to school briefing. I don't know about you all, but I used to always love back to school. And now, as a mom of a 9-year-old in public school, I really have often enjoyed back to school because you enjoy the summer and then all of a sudden there is something that your kid gets to do for many hours a day. But this year, back to school has felt a little different because we are seeing increased attacks on public education. There have obviously been attacks at the state level, but we're now seeing increased attacks on public education at the federal level, unlike anything that we've seen before. ICE agents are trolling many of our kids' schoolyards, showing up at schools. Active shooter situations are the norm in many schools where there are active shooter drills, even for the most young students that we have in our schools. And we've seen a loss of funding or a threatening of funding for critical education programs that communities and our families depend on nationwide. All of this can be very scary for all of us in this country, especially scary for parents and for our kids and our educators. And so we are hosting this webinar tonight, first of all, to just be in community with each other as people who are not going to give up on a future for our children, who are not going to give up on education in this country, and who are not going to give up on democracy in this country. We want to be in community and spend some time together. And so I hope this can provide it for you all that are tuning in live or for those that will watch later on. We are also hosting this conversation for you to hear from parents, from advocates and lawyers, from educators, from the people that are on the front lines every single day of this fight. To hear from them, to be in community with you. We hope you leave with a little hope and with a lot of determination. I'm the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, which is a national legal organization that is committed to using the courts and the law in communities across the country for progress. Our team at Democracy Forward, and you're going to get to meet one of my colleagues, Steve Bressler, who has been one of these lawyers on the front lines, and our partners have been on the front lines of holding the Trump-Vance administration accountable in the courts. Since inauguration, we have filed nearly 100 cases in the courts, launched literally thousands of investigative demands. We are winning in the courts on behalf of teachers, parents, educators, nonprofit organizations, houses of worship, small businesses, and more. And tonight we are going to give you some hope and celebrate some of those wins and our commitment. But we're also going to talk about some of the challenges that we face and what we can all do in this moment. We know that the only way out of the situation that this country is in is through it, and through it together. And so that is really what tonight is about. The courts have really been proven to be an important bulwark and stop on this administration, slowing down lawless activity at both the federal and the state level. The courts have been deeply skeptical of what the administration is doing. We are winning in court before judges that were appointed by President Trump himself, before judges appointed by Republican presidents, and before judges appointed by Democratic presidents. We are aware of the Supreme Court and some of the decisions that they've made, including in the education context, that has unfortunately allowed some harms to continue. But we are here tonight to talk to you not just about that, but also about the wins that we are seeing across the board. Sort of being in this fight with you, we have seen at Democracy Forward that two things are clear. The Trump-Vance administration is often operating outside the bounds of the law, and the courts are seeing that behavior for what it is, and you're seeing that from judges across the ideological spectrum. We, of course, believe that this country and our government needs to focus on how to improve education for all and how to support those who need education, those who are educators, those who are parents and communities, and that no one's life has been made better by the assault that we've seen on public education in this country. This isn't a red issue. It's not a blue issue. It's not even a purple issue. These policies hurt everyone. And so we want to be there. We will be there with you every step of the way to defend against it and to build for the future. At Democracy Forward, our organization, we were the first to take action and win against the president's plan to dismantle the Department of Education. Of course, after winning in multiple courts, the Supreme Court froze our win, although it is not said that what the president has done is lawful, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. But we've also successfully forced the administration to unfreeze billions of dollars in funding for public schools. The schools that many of our kids are going to right now are being funded through dollars that Democracy Forward and its allies were able to force this administration to unfreeze. We have also been able to defeat attempts to penalize schools, to defund schools and to target schools that teach real American history and that teach and speak about racism. And we are fighting to protect funding for museums and libraries nationwide. So we're really working on all front, and we're doing this in service, of course, of the American people, of families, and communities. So the first thing that I wanted to do tonight was really start with a sense of hope and some of the wins that we've seen. Believe me, we'll get to some of the challenges. And I'm excited to introduce you to someone on our team at Democracy Forward who was with us every step of the way and who was a real part of this win. We have been representing a coalition of more than a dozen school districts, teachers unions, nonprofit organizations that challenged the president's unlawful withholding of billions of dollars of funding that Congress directed to support students for this school year that all of our kids are in. We challenged it. and the funds have now been released to public schools nationwide. And so we're first going to hear from the lead attorney on that case, my colleague, Steve Bressler. Before I get to talking with Steve, and thank you, Steve just appeared on the screen for all of us to see Steve, I just want to say another piece of hope that I want you all to have and to know is that attorneys like Steve have spent their careers doing sophisticated work for the federal government and for other entities, and they could be doing anything in this moment. And Steve has chosen in the last few months to join the Democracy Forward team to lead litigation like this one, and to really be on the front lines for the American people. And so we are so grateful to have Steve on our team as a senior legal advisor at Democracy Forward. And I'm even more grateful that he's giving his Monday night to talk to all of us. So thanks, Steve, for tuning in.
Thank you, Sky.
So let's chat and tell folks about this case that you and many of our other colleagues and co-counsel, it's a whole team that does this. We just want to make sure everybody gets the shout out, but have been litigating. And I'll just start to kind of set the stage. Democracy Forward filed a case to challenge the decimation of the Department of Education. And as I mentioned, we filed, we won in the appellate court, and the Supreme Court kind of had a different idea, and they're allowing the president to continue to try to decimate parts of the Department of Education while we're continuing to fight very vigorously in the lower courts. But at the same time we were doing that, the president also, I think, had plans to withhold billions of dollars, and you'll talk to us about this, of funding for schools. And so we didn't let the disappointment of the Supreme Court shadow docket stop us. We filed this suit to challenge what the president was doing in withholding the funds. You've been the lead lawyer, and so we want to chat a little bit about that grants case. Can you talk a little bit about sort of like how the fight unfolded and what you were able to secure, you and the team were able to secure for so many people tuning in tonight who have their kids in public schools or who are educators in these schools?
Sure. So as you said, Sky, schools rely on federal funds to make up part of their budget. And Congress, aware that the school year starts in August, September, some places even July, makes federal funds available to school districts passed through their states beginning on July 1st. And it's been that way for decades under a law passed in 1965. So schools rely on this so they can, plan their budget, hire teachers, plan programming. This year, Congress passed the spending bill that the federal government is operating under in March. And this Congress and this president signed a law that said, okay, make that money available on July 1st. But on the afternoon of June 30th, just the day before, the Trump-Vance administration said, actually, we're not going to make this money available tomorrow like we have every year for as long as anyone can remember. We want to review it to make sure it's being spent consistent with the president's policy priorities. But that's not the way the law is written. These are called formula grants because there's a mathematical formula that Congress has enunciated in law and said, here is how much to spend, here is how much each state gets, how much each school district within a state gets, just by doing the math. But they didn't say how long they were going to take to do this review, and they withheld over $6 billion in federal funds. So we were proud to work with teachers unions, parents, the Florida PTA, school districts, including Anchorage and Cuspec in Alaska and Cincinnati Public Schools, and others, to go to court and stand up on their behalf and say, this is illegal. You need to do what the law says you need to do. As this is happening, we know from our school district clients and others we spoke with that it was causing chaos because schools were relying on this money, just like Americans rely on their paycheck every couple weeks to come in and fill the bank account so you can pay your bills. Schools were laying off teachers, canceling programming. So we got to court within a couple weeks in July, and rather than try to come up with a way to defend doing something that was patently illegal under the law that, again, President Trump had just signed in March, the administration agreed to release the over $6 billion in funding to local school districts. Now, that is not all of the funds for this year. A chunk of money comes out on July 1st, and then another big chunk of money is due to come out on October 1st. So we went to the Trump-Vance administration and said, we can talk about dropping our lawsuit if you will commit and allow the court to enforce your commitment to release the additional billions of dollars that are due on October 1st on time. And we're very pleased that they did agree to that and filed a stipulation with the court committing to release the rest of the money on October 1st or within a day or two thereafter without any new conditions.
That's amazing. And like, if we could review a little bit of this, because I think that folks that are tuning in, Steve, it's so intimidating. I mean, you and I live in the DC area and we're seeing the military roll down the street, and many people in their communities are seeing, ICE is showing up at their kids' school. I mean, this is like such an intimidating situation. And what you've just described is the courage that districts and people and parents and educators had to step forward. And you mentioned places like Anchorage. You mentioned places that are frankly, I think in what we would call red states. And some of those places, they still have the courage to step forward and to demand better in court. And you and the team were able to do that. And what I'm hearing is that then the Trump-Vance administration, really without having to move the case through the Supreme Court, through all of these processes going up to the Supreme Court, in some ways threw their hands up and said, okay, you've got us. We're going to do that. I mean, just want to make sure we're understanding this. That's pretty accurate what happened, it seems like.
That's right. That's what happened. And nice thing about it, when they couldn't even defend what they were doing, is this is a victory that the Supreme Court can't take away. School districts have that money right now, and it's reducing class sizes, training teachers, and benefiting kids.
Well, that's amazing. And I think a lesson for those that are tuning in, everyone's asking, what can they do? Do the courts really work? I mean, our answer about do the courts really work, or we try to get them to work every day, and, they work more often than not in the cases we're working on, but there are some disappointments. But this is a real, I think, example of if you stand your ground and push and have good lawyers like you, but also a community, a big coalition, that we can see this change for people. And I think it's important that all of us in this time understand that it could be much worse without these types of things, and that there are wins that are being had. So just taking a step back, because I know you've been really diving into this with our team at Democracy Forward. This is certainly not the only threat to education. So can you talk a little bit about some of the other threats that you and the team are seeing, things that you want folks tuning in to watch out for, in anything there that you want to flag, or that you just want people to say, like, I'm not sure if that's legal, and maybe we should pick up the phone and call some lawyers. We're always available at Democracy Forward to receive those calls.
Well, one thing I would mention, we talked about how Congress passed a law this past March giving states and school districts money to spend. And that is the law that we use to make sure that the school districts got their money. Congress is in the process of writing a new law for next year. In President Trump's budget, he asked that these same programs that support smaller class sizes, teacher training, that they be cut by a great deal or zeroed out. And the House of Representatives has passed its proposal, or is working on its proposal, that would severely cut this funding. And we need to see what the Senate does and what happens. Often they can't agree. So that is a looming threat for next year. I think, we've taken care of these funds for the 25-26 school year, but this could be a severe problem for school districts next year, and something that, I think we can all talk to our members of Congress about, or, PTAs and local representatives. Skye, you mentioned things that this administration has done to try to leverage money, put illegal conditions on money, to do what it seemed like they were trying to do with these funds, and use them to force the Trump administration's policies down, school boards onto school boards nationwide that may not agree and may want to teach accurate history, teach about Reconstruction, teach about the civil rights movement. As you know, our colleagues at Democracy Forward had another suit challenging a Department of Education letter that went out threatening to take money away from schools that don't essentially, teach history and teach things the way that President Trump wants them to. We have won on that. There are other lawsuits ongoing, but I think attempts to, education is controlled locally in this country for the most part, with a lot of state and federal resources. And the administration is trying to use that tail to wag the dog and get schools to teach what they want. And that's something that if a community disagrees, they can stand up to.
Well, Steve, I can't thank you enough for obviously everything that you've done, that our team has done, and for joining us tonight. So it sounds like some takeaways, everybody. First of all, we want you to know that attorneys like Steve on our team are working every single day to make sure that people in communities can get into court when the president or the administration tries to bully the schools or parents or students into these types of things. And so if you feel like your school is being bullied, you can always reach out to Democracy Forward or to many other lawyers across the country that are really committed to this work. We want you to remember that, folks that are tuning in, we have seen a very big win, and our our kids, like my son that's in a public school, they're seeing this funding in their schools because people had the courage to step up and to say no more, and it worked. And then it sounds like what you're saying, Steve, is that all these calls that everybody sometimes get tired of making, or they wonder if they work, we need to be making our calls, whether that's to our local folks or to our congressional folks. We need to be making our voices heard because this is a good win now, but it's not forever. And we need to make sure that we're advocating for our kids and their future, right? So thank you for joining. And Steve mentioned that we've been really active in working with parents in Florida and educators in Florida, including in some of these cases. And I am so excited to get to bring on education advocates and parents who are with us tonight and are really working every day, including in very hard places, and not just hard places because of the Trump administration, but places like Florida, places like my home state of Texas, where the state governments are also not as supportive of education of our futures as they should be. So I'm incredibly excited to bring on Jude, who you're seeing. Hi, Jude, the president-elect of the Florida Parent-Teacher Association, the Florida PTA. Jude is also a dad, and our friend Drew Vaughn, who is a parent and a board member of the Florida PTA. So you are looking at people who have been in the middle of the fight. This fight didn't start for them on Inauguration Day of this year, but it certainly got harder on Inauguration Day. And thank you guys for spending your Monday night with us and for being in community with us. So I'd love to just kind of open it up to both of you. Maybe Jude, you could start, and then Drew. But as leaders and as parents in Florida, can you talk a little bit about how these policy attacks, what we just talked about with Steve, or other attacks that you're seeing, are showing up in the daily lives of your family, of students, of communities in Florida and in other communities? Jude, I don't know if you want to start with that, or...
Sure, certainly. And it's a privilege to be here with you and Sky and the team. And we appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing, not just for the families here in Florida, but throughout the country. Here in Florida, and as with many school districts across the state, it's the lack of stability that is concerning, that is impacting many of our schools. As Steve articulately mentioned, we have a process in which the federal government appropriate funds to be able to support our schools, and that's stopped a little bit, and it frightened many of our school districts where some tough decisions had to be made and then redone. We also have the concern, and this was on top of the fact that many of our school districts had just, spent the last cent of the dollars they received from ESSERs as due to the pandemic that had dried up, that they were using to augment many of the resources in the schools. But to put it simply, the lack of stability that many of our school districts and schools are facing is very concerning. And that's across the state and the country.
Drew, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing kind of big picture impacts. If you look at any of the news stories from Florida, one of the things you'll see is we're seeing massive declines in enrollment in public school. And that is in large part due to attacks like these. And there's a plethora of attacks coming at public school. But cutting funding is one of the core ways that they can attack what is happening. And that's not just, Hillsborough County. I'm in Tampa. In Hillsborough County, we've lost about 10,000 students just since last year. And so like these are sizable numbers, but that then also boils down to the local school. So my wife and I, we have 4 kids. 3 of our kids are still in elementary school, which is where I'm the president of the PTA. And our school orientation was supposed to happen last week. And for all the parents on the call, we've all been to a billion of these things, right? You go, you tour the rooms, you meet the principal, you sit in a room. Me as the PTA president, I get to beg you to please come volunteer for stuff. And so a lot of things like that. Our school orientation was canceled this year. And the reason it was canceled is enrollment is so far down as a result of these consequences that my kids did not have an orientation. We didn't have our first PTA meeting, and now it's been temporarily rescheduled. We'll find out when it's going to be. But these are having direct impacts from the macro level of losing 10,000 students to the micro level of your kids not getting to have orientation.
Wow. And I'm sure that there are folks tuning in that are experiencing the same thing or things that are similar. I want to talk about, it's just so powerful to us that the Florida PTA joined the lawsuit that Steve was discussing. I mean, I just want everybody that's tuning in to understand what I'm saying. The Florida PTA joined a lawsuit to challenge the administration from, with their decision to withhold funds for our kids' schools. And it was so powerful in so many ways. And so I'd love to hear, maybe Jude, just in your role as president-elect, and Drew, you're on the board, could we hear a little bit about why this was the decision that the Florida PTA made? And the reason I'm asking that, just for folks that are tuning in, is there are folks that are tuning in that are being faced, with a lot of things that they didn't choose and things that are very harmful to their kids, and they're probably unlawful. And we know it's hard to make a decision, especially in a state like Florida. We know it's hard to make a decision to sort of take this type of bold action. So I would love to hear, Jude, from you, and then maybe from Drew, about kind of what it was and what you would say to folks that are tuning in tonight, because that alone provides me such hope.
Well, I definitely concur. It definitely was a decision we had to make. And we definitely, as an organization, had a few quick rounds of conversation. But we went back to the simplest of our mission, which is to make every child's potential a reality. And when you put that into perspective, joining the lawsuit is because we had no other option. And it was the most practical thing to do. There was no legislative session in which we could have organized people in our state legislature, perhaps our state government could have made up for the shortfall, which for us here in Florida was to the tune of $360 million. That was going to impact all 67 school districts here in our state. So when we put our mission at the forefront, this was the only option for us. And, the experience that I brought to that decision was having to work for a school district, Miami County Public Schools, the 3rd largest in the country, and seeing the impact that what those dollars do. Having been a former union organizer and having to represent teachers who actually benefit and get paid through these funds. And now the most precious hat that I wear with Drew every single day when we lead this organization is a father of a kindergartner who just started school, who is on the spectrum and his class benefit from these funds, and a 12-year-old who wants to be in 12th grade right now, but who is receiving these benefits of the funds as a 7th grader and at a magnet school at that. There was no other option than to advocate, and Florida PTA taking all that into context with their own experience from the communities that they lead for us to join this, because we would not be Florida PTA if we had not joined, knowing what was at stake.
That's amazing. I mean, we say a lot at Democracy Forward, the cost of inaction is so much greater than the cost of action, even when acting can be scary. And I just want to make sure that folks are focusing, everybody that's tuned in tonight. We know you're on the program if you've tuned in, but this is not a blue state only thing that's happening, right? We have communities rising up across the country, including in places like Florida, that are saying enough is enough. And I think this transcends. It should transcend our kids' future, should transcend all of these things that sort of polarize us. And you guys really, I think, showed that and achieved something, because now all of our kids have the funding for the schools for this year, the federal funding that they need through this. Drew, I want to turn to you on kind of the role that parents are playing in defending public education locally. You mentioned you're a dad of 4. I am a mom of 1, but I've got 4 amazing godkids and a best friend who is a mom of 4 in Texas public schools, and she's been such an advocate there. And I'm always so amazed when I look either in my own child's school or with our friends or across the country and see parents showing up. And I know that some folks that are on tonight are parents. So could you talk about like what role parents are playing in this moment, what impact that could have? That, I think that a lot of folks would love to kind of explore that a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And I, it's one of those things where, as a parent, I used to have a lot more hair than this back in the day. I'm perpetually exhausted. I always have something to do. I think I've got like 3 loads of laundry in or around my dryer right now. Right there's a lot of other things that we could be doing. Here in Florida, we're in a situation where the PTA had to step up because we didn't have anybody in the government who was going to step up and advocate for our kids. So this is something that Steve touched on, that there were states that had filed to sue the government to get that money. Florida was not one of them. And so parents had to step up. And frankly, parents across Florida are stepping up again and again and again. I literally left a meeting to hop onto this Zoom because we're organizing a group of parents to go and oppose book bans tomorrow. And so this is something that is going on nonstop across the board, that parents are stepping up and realizing there's not a cavalry coming over the hill. There's no one coming to save us. We're going to have to do it ourselves. And so partnering with groups like Democracy Forward, where we can act in solidarity and do things like win a $7 billion lawsuit, which is an insane number to say, can only happen when parents get engaged and start working with groups like Democracy Forward.
Well, that's great. And I do think for those that are tuning in, if you have questions about what you can do in this moment, we welcome you to reach out to us. Our emails are on the website. You can go to info@Democracy Forward. And I'm sure Drew and Jude also welcome you to reach out. So there's a lot of inspiration that we can take. Let me just ask a question, parent to parent, for us on this. How are you talking to your kids about what is happening in this moment, and what advice do you have for people that are struggling to be honest with their kids without scaring them? I mean, today there were reports ICE was in the schools in DC, where my son is in the DC public schools today. So how are you talking to your kids? Obviously you got different age ranges, and what advice do you give parents in addition to getting involved? We got to get everybody involved. Sort of how are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So I'm in a little bit of a different situation. My wife and I are both white. We've adopted all 4 of our children who are Black or Latino. So we have to have a lot of very open conversations about what is happening. And so we try to err on the side of letting them know what's going on, what we're doing to try and push back to make sure that they're safe, but so that they're aware that there are risks out there. I'm not going to say that it's easy. I mean, I've had to, we're in Florida, where one of the education policies that was changed is to have teachers teach that slavery was a positive. As someone who grew up on a farm, I can definitely identify what comes out of the south end of a northbound bowl, and that's exactly what that is. For my 3 Latino kids, we had to have them sit around our kitchen table and practice saying, I'm an American citizen. I was born in Chicago, and my parents are American citizens. They were born in the United States. That is frankly horrifying. That's something that no parent should ever have to do. My
parents got me my first car, I think 11th grade, or maybe senior high. The memories fade once you hit 30. we had the tough conversation about what it is that I need to do in the event I were to get pulled over. Because I went to school downtown, going through the suburbs, the whole 9 yards. And I said, I never want to be in a position growing up to have that conversation with any of my children. But I find myself having to have other conversations with my daughter, who asks a lot of questions about life and why things are. And it is tough. It is tough. I don't want to paint a rosy picture because I don't want to set her up for failure or to have unreal expectations with my wife. But it has definitely been some tough conversation, even as recently her trying to wrap her head around, why are we not getting vaccines anymore? I just got my shots. What's happening? And so it just brought me to the perspective of the work that I'm doing with PTA, with Drew, with my president, Maxine, and board members, that we have to do something, because at some point there needs to be a generation that doesn't have to deal with the realities that we're dealing right now. And it is tough. I can't sugarcoat it. And I am struggling.
Well, yeah, it's a struggle. And I can say, as a mom of a son, we're having to talk about why the military is walking around in the streets with guns. On top of all of the things we want to make sure that our kids has the full answer. But I think we're all aiming to have honest conversations, age appropriate and honest conversations. We have to prioritize the safety of our kids, which sometimes means you're having conversations that you never hope to have, or you certainly never hope to have with someone that's young, as young as they are. But we can all do it, and we can do it by finding community together. And that's why I just want to say we're so grateful for the courage and the bravery that the Florida PTA showed in joining the lawsuit, for the win that we secured, but for what you guys are doing in your communities every day, and for giving your time to be here to show folks that are tuning in or folks that may watch this that we're all in this together, and everybody is feeling at times desperate, at times hopeful, at times alone, at times scared. And this is the thing that we can do together. So if you're tuning in, be sure you're signing up at democracyforward.org to be in these types of communities. And Jude and Drew, you are truly, you've been the heroes at Democracy Forward for some time, but you're truly heroes for all of us. And thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And I know you're both probably getting on another call for something having to do with your kids. So thank you for joining us for the bit of time that you can. So we're bringing them off stage. I just wanted to highlight, Steve mentioned this, and I'm super excited to get to bring on our other guest in just a moment, Randy Weingarten, who is an educator, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, and just a true champion of all things education, all things for our kids and our future. And we've been working with her on so many different cases in AFT, but one I just wanted to make sure we're highlighting. We're talking about the wins. We've talked about the disappointment on the Department of Education case, just making sure everyone's tuning into that because of the Supreme Court, but don't think that that's stopping our team from fighting every single day. And one of the ways we fought was to get this billions of dollars of school money back, even with the Department of Education being decimated as we speak, while we're continuing to fight that case. Another way we've really been able to fight back is we have secured a tremendous win against the administration's policy that was seeking to require school districts across the nation to censor what they were teaching students, to abandon student programs that are about fairness, in order to try to secure, quote, compliance with the Trump-Vance administration's crusade against civil rights, against diversity, against equity, inclusion, accessibility. On Valentine's Day, this was not the Valentine anyone wanted this year, the Department of Education under the Trump-Vance administration put out what was called a Dear Colleague letter. You guys have probably heard about this, that was really threatening federal funding for education institutions K through 12, but also higher education institutions that taught things like history, sociology, lessons that reference race, that provide support to students in the form of diversity. We sued. We sued alongside AFT with Randy. We sued alongside school districts. There were other suits that were filed. Every single court that has looked at it has said that what the administration did was unlawful. And we were really pleased to secure the first, what we call a summary judgment order, a final court order in the district court, to strike down what is really an autocratic policy. I don't say that academically. We say that because that's what it was. It was trying to control what our schools teach and the ideas that our students and our children can be exposed to if the president disagrees with them. And we've been able to strike that down. And there have been few organizations that have leaned in harder in this moment than the American Federation of Teachers. It was one of the plaintiffs in that case with the big win. It is a plaintiff in some of our cases where we are still fighting. They have been a longtime partner and defender of democracy on all fronts. They've been a longtime partner and of democracy forward. And they've truly been unflappable in the face of threats to teachers and educators. And I am so honored that Randy Weingarten, who has an incredibly busy schedule, has taken time out to be with us here today. So I think we're going to bring Randy on.
Oh my God.
Thank you for joining us.
It was so great to hear. Sorry, I've been like reading and
You're like doing all this
to read, but I was listening, Sky, to the dads that you just had on.
Florida PTA.
Florida PTA. It's so exciting. It's so props to them for everything that they're doing. And I just let me just say, you, my friend, are my hero. The courage that you have had and the foresight in putting together Democracy Forward. And if you watch the juxtapositioning of so many of our colleagues, I'm a teacher and a lawyer, but so many of our colleagues in the legal profession thought much more about, what their firms, pocketbooks look like than the freedom and the allegiance to the Constitution that we all take the oath of office to. And then here you are doing this fight every single day with the law firm that you have assembled. It's just really, it's so courageous and so compelling. I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. And we've done it really alongside you. So I want to do two things, folks.
Sure.
Tuning in. One is I just want you also are one of these examples of courage, of leaning in, of not being intimidated. That's people that are tuning in. It's not easy. People just kind of do it because that's what you have to do. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what inspired you and AFT to join this Dear Colleague suit, which has been a really big win. And then people, before we leave, we're going to hear about the book. We're going to hear about the book that's coming out and what we need to know about it and how we can access it. But let's start with this because this was a big win. I mean, a lot of folks said that we were not going to win this. And we won before, by the way, a judge that was appointed by President Trump, which was, I think, really important to make it very clear. This is not political. It's all about the Constitution. So talk to us a little bit about what led AFT into this fight.
So, a lot of people, think about all the stuff that Trump is doing as alphabet land. And, we ourselves we all kind of get into code and talk about things in code. So, somebody says, oh, he's going against DEI. Oh, no, we're for DEI. And regular human beings have no idea what DEI means. I mean, so essentially, what happened on Valentine's Day, and it was ridiculous that it was that day, the Department of Education, they don't actually control curriculum. They don't actually control any schools in the United States of America. The only part of the administration that does control schools is the Bureau of Indian Affairs controls some schools on reservations, and the Department of Defense, now known as the Department of War, controls some of the schools on the bases that military personnel families go to. By the way, some of the best schools in America. So they basically put out something they call a Dear Colleague letter, which is about guidance of how to follow federal law. This was not guidance. What this was basically a rewrite of all the civil rights laws of the United States of America, starting with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in the Constitution. And they basically said, oh no, we now believe that this is what the civil rights laws say, which was essentially the opposite of what they say. And then they went so far initially in their February 14th letter that by the weekend, that was a Friday, they had to actually say, oops, we got it a little bit wrong. But essentially what they were doing was saying that if you don't follow what we think it means, which is basically erasing history like slavery, erasing the progressive movement, basically if you don't actually erasing things like believing that all children should be in school, these kinds of things. They said, if you don't actually do what we say you should do and certify that you're doing it by the end of April, then we're going to take away all of your federal money. And they did it K through 12 and higher education. And we looked at this. I know your lawyers did, Sky, and we looked at it and we're like, what? Like, what? And so what we did was we said, and you and I said this in that great Atlantic article, you gotta actually make this matter to a court, which means you can't just put statistics in. You can't just say this is wrong. You have to show how it matters. And your great lawyers and our folks work together with some school boards and some teachers and some parents. And we said, not only is this a rewrite, like fictional rewrite of the civil rights laws, it's really harming kids. Like you're taking away their summer school programs, their after school programs, like you're erasing history. That's not what we do. We try to make schools safe and welcome for kids. You can't take away their programs mid-year. And it was amazing because in April, the day that the certification was due, there were 3 lawsuits. We won all 3 of them. NAACP won in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
We won, you won, your lawyers, we won in Maryland. And then NEA won in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, yeah.
Or New Hampshire. But ours, let me just brag on you for a minute. Ours is a nationwide injunction because of who the plaintiffs are. And then the court, when we went on the merits, so the first was just, no. You cannot do this to school systems. You cannot take away their money just because you want to rewrite the Constitution or civil rights laws. That's for the Congress to do. But then this last one, basically this Trump appointed judge, went through in many, many pages, kind of like the Harvard case, and said, this is why this is really way wrong. So props to you.
Well, and to you all. And so for folks that are tuning in, I think one of the themes of all the stories we're telling is if your district is feeling bullied by the administration or frankly, probably by your state government and saying, we can't do this because of something, should be, I think, a real red flag. And you can reach out to us, you can reach out to AFT, you can reach out to a lot of different folks to really look at this stuff, because in large part, much of this is unlawful, which is a great segue as we wrap up here. Randy has a new book coming out. We are so excited. We're going to get to celebrate the launch is it like a week?
Yes,
it's a week. Very exciting. As a person who has educators in my family, I saw the title and I immediately was like, this is exactly what we all need to understand. So Randy, show us the book, Why Fascists Fear Teachers, and tell us what you want folks to know about the thesis of your book, what you're trying to communicate to the American people, and how they can get engaged and get in and get involved in the things in the book.
So I know it's a provocative title, and I did a provocative title on purpose I don't actually call any particular person a fascist, because I don't want the debate to be, is he or isn't he? I talk about as fascistic behaviors, and why for these last several years, why is there so much demeaning and smearing of teachers when teachers are just trying to create critical thinkers and create, just like you said, Sky, about your kids in public school, a safe and welcoming environment where we build opportunity and have kids kind of match passion and purpose for every single child? Like, why would this be happening to teachers? Why this great distrust? And what it is, after all these years, is fascistic behavior, the demonizing of, the undermining of, the dehumanizing of, the us versus them. It's because there is a fear of knowledge and a fear of pluralism. And what do public schools do more than anything else? They bring people together, people who may be really different, who may never agree on anything with each other. Their kids are in the same classroom together. They bring people together to try to create a community and a society, and we try to help give kids the skills and knowledge so they can fly. So this is about a love story to teachers, to people who send their kids to public schools. We're not perfect, but we're trying real hard, and we know we have to strengthen opportunity for all kids. But it's also a way of understanding that this demonization of teachers in public schools is not about test scores. It is about a fear of the knowledge and the skills that we need to provide to all kids so they can claim their lives. Let's fight for a future for everyone, not revel in a past that wasn't so great.
Well, that is, I mean, I can't wait. We're all excited about celebrating it when it comes out. For folks that are tuning in, you obviously care about education so much that you're tuning in on a Monday night. Randy's book, Why Fascists Fear Teachers, will be coming out soon. And there's things we can all learn. And we know, I mean, this has been like as old as the country itself, that the greatest threat to autocracy, we know, is an educated public,
Exactly.
right? And then you have people that want to polarize. And one of the greatest threats to that is actually getting a bunch of people together and realize, hey, we have a lot more in common. We all want, construction paper in the art room, and we all want good microscopes in the science room, and we can all come together and work for these common purposes. So thank you for your leadership, for your friendship, for being here with all of us tonight. And everybody check out this book as it's coming out. I think we all have a lot to learn from it. For those of you that tuned in tonight, thank you so much for giving your Monday night for us here and for this conversation. We encourage you to get involved. You can get involved in Democracy Forward's work by going to democracyforward.org, signing up for our newsletter. We do not spam you, so you can sign up for our newsletter. If you want to get folks together in your community, we have special programs. They do not cost money, called Dinners for Democracy, Coffee for Change. We've got some other programs as well. So please tune in, follow us. I hope you were inspired and left with a little bit of hope tonight, and with a lot of determination, because we've got a long way to go for the future that we want, and also to oppose the attacks that are happening now. But we can do it if we do it together. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks to the fabulous staff at Democracy Forward that's been working behind the scenes to create this experience for all of us tonight. We'll see you next time.